Absolutely infuriating, but it is what it is. And I know you're all going to start coming in here now. I want to just say good morning and a wonderful Sunday morning to all of you. There's lots of good stuff happening and lots of crazy stuff happening, and we're going to talk about it today. And today I'm doing a little bit of an experiment. Something I've been working up to and wanting to do for quite some time is to do a simul broadcast across all the streams. So through my encoder and on locals to all of you who subscribe there, and I greatly appreciate it. But also to try it on Twitter as well. So Honking For Freedom is broadcasting this. The National Telegraph is broadcasting this. It's all over the place. But I just want to set this up, see how it works as possibly a median for people to ask direct questions occasionally on certain topics, right? So all of you who are sending me comments right now in text form, I see all of you. Thank you. Good morning to all of you. Good morning, John, Megan, Sonia. You guys are awesome. But I also think it might be worthwhile over time to have Twitter Spaces operating so people can ask direct questions at the end of a stream, and particularly people who continue to try to criticize, or maybe they don't understand some of the perspectives on what I call the rationalist, factual side of all these debates around what happened during Freedom Convoy and what led up to the Freedom Convoy and the corruption within our political parties. And what I discussed yesterday, which is Big Con Canada Inc. So hopefully this will serve as a medium, and we'll see how it works. But thank you, Sonia. Good morning. Those Twitter Spaces are awesome. Well, there's one right now going on simultaneously, Sonia. And I know a lot of people wanted me to do audio form as well, like an audio form podcast. The problem is I have to make this as efficient as possible, because often I'm doing these streams, and once I click stop, I grab my bag, I grab my phone, I go down the street, pick up breakfast, go to my truck, and then I'm on my way down to the U.S. So I don't have a lot of time for production issues and for production time, especially since I do other podcasts, as you know. And tonight, by the way, we're doing another episode of Not on Record, discussing Andrew Tate and things around the Andrew Tate case. I don't necessarily agree with all the assessments and conclusions, but that's what we need to focus on. Working with and having friends who have differing political views, which I'm going to get into a little bit here. So if you can, like, share, subscribe. If you are on Twitter, then you can share the space and people can listen in. And then if people want, at the end, we can do some questions, some Q&A if there's enough people. I don't think there necessarily will be. Again, I didn't really announce this beyond just posting it very quickly. So, like, share, subscribe, said all of that. I hope you're all having an amazing morning. We're going to talk about some negative stuff again today. But try to focus on things from a positive frame. And it's funny, even people get confused, even when, maybe I go on a little bit of a rant or, whatever. Like, I'm not angry. Just people are what people are, and I call them out. Doesn't mean I'm angry. Doesn't mean you should be angry. It means we're just being honest. And that's a good thing. Patricia, sending loads of love and support from the Netherlands. New things coming up soon. I will keep you informed. Yeah, Patricia, please let me know and send me a DM over Twitter. As you know, I finally got your message on one of those Facebook accounts. I barely use Facebook. That's probably why. But we do need to have a quick follow-up and talk about the Netherlands, which we had discussed previously. All right. So yesterday, for those of you who are listening to me, I discussed Crowder and the Daily Wire. And my perspective, do you think that was fair? And just a quick summation, we know what's happening in terms of Crowder oh God, there goes the camera again. I hope that didn't kill the Twitter space. No, it didn't. Okay, perfect. that Daily Wire sent an intent letter or an intent agreement to negotiate to Crowder. Crowder thought it was quite egregious, some of the things that were in there, and from his perspective, from the creator perspective, and Daily Wire's having a conversation about money. Crowder's having a conversation about the ethics of contracts. So they're having two completely different conversations. I think at some point they're going to find some common ground and actually engage in the same conversation. And I wouldn't be surprised if over time they end up working together and signing an agreement. And if they don't, they will end up supporting each other. Many conflicts, we see this in our daily lives, just result from people talking past each other and having completely different conversations. And that's why with the Crowder Daily Wire thing, I'm not taking any sides, if you will. All right, so the one of the things that's trending yesterday that it's so frustrating. Boycott Scotiabank because dissident, a raging dissident, I think is the name he uses online. It used to be Raging Humanist a while ago when he was harassing myself and many other people 3-4 years ago. That's what he's built his online YouTube persona on, is just harassing random people, which is why my sympathies are very, very, not very deep, despite the fact that I did feel some sympathy when he was in jail. He should not have been involved in the commission looking into Freedom Convoy at all, because he was antithetical to the convoy. I put this in a tweet so people understand. I responded to Viva Fry, who posted a give, send, go, and I don't agree with what's happening to him, by the way. So, and I'll get to that in a second. But I responded this to Viva Fry. I said, remember when this grifter went on his streams during Freedom Convoy, repeatedly attacking Tamara Lich, myself, and other convoy organizers. His mouthy bullshit caused so many headaches for us during Convoy. It was almost as though he works for Big Con Canada Inc. All right? Now, that was my response to Viva Fry about Mr. McKenzie, who I absolutely hate. I hate him. I really do. Now, I don't hate him out of anger. I hate him out of, he's inconsequential to my life, and I really don't care. But I am going to defend him. I hate him, but I'm going to defend him. I said, and I listed, I have these 3 points that are very important that our recency bias seems to forget. First, he wouldn't, I just illustrated that point, that he wouldn't shut his mouth during the convoy and spread rumors about us, which did nothing but help sow discontent amongst the truckers and certain organizers. The same thing, by the way, that Tom Marazzo was doing, the Keith Wilson group was doing, causing doubt amongst everybody else, and the synergy and that we had developed amongst all of us. We were constantly trying to bat away these people who seem to have connections to Big Con Canada Inc. That's the network of money, NGOs, political organizations, YouTubers, who just promulgate bullshit political narratives on behalf of the conservative establishment for them, right? So that's point number one. Number two, he did send threatening letters to senators with his Diagolon bullshit. And by the way, the Diagolon bullshit was hysterical. This is not the time for it, though. This is not the climate to do that. And you couldn't see that blowing up in your face. Well, that's why I was doing messaging for the Freedom Convoy, and people like that weren't, because they are unable to anticipate how the negative reaction and blowback will be pointed in their direction. And number three, he's built his career on harassing people and Jewish conspiracy theories. Let's not all forget that. And you can think what you want. I don't really care what people think. It's fine, great. But that is, if anything, antithetical to any sort of movement that you want to reach regular people, people who are on the other side of the aisle. Well, when you take somebody like this and try to say this is your example of somebody's who represents oppression, like no. Let's take somebody reasonable. Now, having said that, I did send letters to the bank and CC'd lawyers strategically while my bank accounts and credit cards and everything was frozen, and I got a response. And I waited until the government in their parliamentary hearing said, oh, it wasn't us, the banks did it on their own accord. That was Krista Friedland. And that's when I had Mark Petroni draft an article for my Substack explaining how she's lying. And we embedded in that article the email I received from Scotiabank that inferred that it was indeed the government and at the advisement of the RCMP that Scotiabank had locked our accounts. And obviously, it's not an endorsement of it. And Daily Wire picked it up. Jordan Peterson retweeted it. Zero Hedge reposted it. It would have been nice if they kind of sourced the original link, but they didn't. But it is what it is, right? This is a little. That's kind of the strategic model that you need to use, right? So instead of focusing on the guy who was harassing myself and other YouTubers and spreading rumors about us during the convoy and the various other things he did, sending the threatening letters to, like, that was so stupid. Yeah, it was a joke. It was so stupid. So stupid. People in government don't have a sense of humor. You need to understand who your audience is. But let's take an example that I've been talking about in interviews since the Freedom Convoy, which was Roman Abramovich, right? Now, Roman Abramovich has political opinions that some people in the West do not like, the lefties in the West, obviously. And this is not an endorsement for or against in Ukraine versus Russia. They're all corrupt a-holes, all of them, both of them. Zelensky's worth $750 million because he's laundering money for Western politicians all over the world. He's jailed his political opponents. Like, they all suck. That's why I'm not being baited into taking a side on this. I don't have a dog in that fight. But he did, Roman Abramovich, who was a billionaire and an oligarch, a Russian oligarch. Because he's Russian and because he's an oligarch, he had his Chelsea football team essentially stolen from him. And he apparently was quite popular within Chelsea, within that area of England, because he completely rejuvenated that soccer team and built it into a contender and did a lot for the community. Irrespective of whether you like his political opinions or not, that's immaterial. I don't really care about that. The fact is, it's an individual, a very, very wealthy individual, who had his soccer team stolen from him by the government. He had all his assets frozen by the UK government. And what did Big Con Canada Inc. do? They celebrated it, right? They celebrated it because, oh, Putin is evil, therefore it's okay. And I was trying to warn people back then that, listen, if they can do it to Abramovich, they're going to be able to do it to everybody. That was my whole Bitcoin case, that your assets, it doesn't matter if you're poor or wealthy, if they're stored within a bank, which is a 3-person custodial wallet, meaning the government, the bank, and you need to agree on every transaction. If the three of you don't agree, then it's not your money, which is the opposite of what Bitcoin is, which is why I was so pro-Bitcoin, and the Bitcoiners during the convoy saw what was happening, reached out to me, and said, let's do something together. I recently found out they had reached out to other people prior to me and had the door slammed in their face. And luckily, I was the one. They saw my hashtag Bitcoin on my profile, and they realized I understood it, and they were able to get money directly to the truckers, the only money that got directly to the truckers. So anyways, Abramovich had all his assets stolen. I had spoken about this on several interviews, that if it can happen to him, it can happen to anybody else. And then what happens during the Freedom Convoy? It happens to us, right? We had our bank accounts frozen, credit cards, lines of credit, corporate accounts, anything that was tied to your name or your SIN number was frozen. And let's not forget, Big Con Canada Inc. was celebrating this when this happened to Abramovich because they didn't like his political opinions. So let's not pretend that there is an actual opposition here, that they all work together on, on numerous things. So, anyways, we're going to get into Big Con Canada Inc. in a second. In addition to this, and this is kind of tangentially related, Sonia says Scotiabank is a WF partner. Yeah, I think what's happening is the WF is turning into a joke. There's many politicians apparently that just walked away from the WF and rejected their invitation this year. It's going to take a while, like anything else. It's a process. It's not like you press a button and everybody abandons it all at once. It's going to happen over time. And this year was the first year you saw, Klaus saying, "Oh, we don't influence any politicians." Excuse me, 6 months ago, remember he did that whole thing saying, "Oh, we have WF junior leaders in half the positions in the Canadian cabinet," as an example. It's funny. Why did he switch? Because he's become a pariah and a joke, and no politician with a functioning brain cell is going to continue to go to the Davos WF functions, which is exactly why Christopher Freeland's there. Right? So on this topic, so let's remember, Abramovich had all his stuff frozen. People like myself and many others explain that this is a warning sign because this can happen to the rest of us, as it happened to not just a billionaire, but it happened to the Canadian truckers. And all of us are either small business people or working class or both or whatever. Okay. Well, yesterday, Diverge Media, run by Greg, which is, I give him credit. He's an old school gumshoes journalist who does real investigative journalism, has been delving into the Freedom Convoy papers, we'll call them. He's been delving into the testimony in the commission, all the circumstance around it. He's been interviewing people who will answer questions, like myself. He was not supportive of what I was explaining to him initially, and then we did an hour-long interview. He went and looked at all the information. He looked at the evidence I provided and realized that, oh, wait, this Dichter guy's actually telling the truth. And I said, yeah, that's why I've been consistent throughout this entire period. So, okay, anyways. I just remembered something that I forgot. Okay, so as Greg has been going on this journey, yesterday he released a little short video. I think it's 10 minutes long. And in that video, he was going through a particular set of emails that were exposed during the commission. And the emails were between Justin Trudeau and Candice Bergen on February 3rd. And the two of them agreeing that, yes, they need to put an end to the convoy, that it's important, they get it all, whatever. Now, what's interesting about that is I've told this story before, but I'll tell it again here. And I don't remember the exact date. I think it was February 5th, February 4th or 5th, like within a day or two of that. It must have been the 4th because it was before I broke my ankle. Right around that time, we were in the Ark Hotel. I was with Tamara and Turtle. What's that Turtle guy? The lawyer, one of the lawyers. There's a bunch of other people there. Myself, Tamara, Dwayne, and a few people just waiting for a couple of people to get back to us, and a bunch of things were going on. And one of them came in. I didn't meet Keith at that point, so I think it was the other lawyer, whatever his name is, Tim something. Tim Turtle, I think his name is, or something like that. Anyways, they said, "Hey, yeah, good news, Candice Bergen," and remember this whole Big Con Canada Inc. thing is going on in the background that we weren't aware of, right? One of the lawyers came to us and said, "Oh yeah, good news, Candice Bergen wants to meet with us, right?" And I said, "Okay, under what circumstances?" And Tamara was right between us. And they said, oh, she wants to meet at the A&W. And I turned to Tamara and I said, no, we're not meeting them. If Candace wants to talk to us, Candace can come in the back door of the hotel into our hotel room and explain to us how they're going to help us, because they're not in power. I know how this party works. I know how their messaging works. And I know how Big Con Canada Inc. works. So tell her if she wants to meet and help us genuinely, that's great. Come over and meet with us. Because if not, if we go to the A&W, and I said this, Tamara, if we go to the A&W, what she's going to do is exactly what Andrew Scheer and Michelle Rempel did to you in the 2018 convoy. She's going to get all of us behind her for a photo shoot and say, you know, I'm the leader of the Conservative Party, blah, blah, blah. Our truckers are upset. They're right to be upset. And but we hear you. The Conservative Party is fighting for you. And now it's time for all the truckers to go home. So I said, no, we are not doing that photo op to give them all the control over the narrative, over the Freedom Convoy. And remember, we had previously already been getting them to try to shove talking points down our throat to become their parrots, which I quickly shot down, and that's why people get upset at me. What can I tell you? Dichter's not a team player. No, Dichter's not a pawn for any political party is what it is. So, and the next day, what happened? Candace comes out of a parliamentary session, and she says exactly what I knew she would say. The Conservative Party is here for you. Western Canadians are upset, but it's time for the truckers to go home. And it blew up in her face. And I turned to everybody and I said, aha, you see, I told you. How would that have gone over if we were all standing behind her? Then we would have been screwed. Then we would have zero political leverage because you would have given it away to the Conservative Party. And I didn't know until during the commission that prior to Candace Bergen sending us that message saying, let's meet at an A&W, that she already was having conversations with Justin Trudeau saying, we need to end the convoy. Now that's the premise of, sorry, I'm not picking my nose, I'm just itchy. That's the whole premise of Diverge Media's commentary yesterday when he goes over this email about how, as I'm trying to explain this whole apparatus and how it works, how Big Con Canada Inc. was clearly working behind the scenes together, the Liberals and the Conservatives, to put an end to the trucking convoy. And I got to tell you, from my perspective, like I saw so much BS from fake organizations and fake NGOs and fake this coming in, trying to take over and over and over. I said, no, tell them to go away. We're fine with messaging. I have 3 interviews popping up. Go talk to the truckers, get them happy, get them their fuel. We're trying not to step on everybody's toes. Let the logistics people deal with the logistics. Let the security people deal with the security. And I would just deal with the messaging. That's what was going on. And constantly, and boy, they got really aggressive. One time, a group of, use of 4-letter words to describe them, came into my hotel room, which was the media center. So they're like, oh, Dichter wasn't really there. Yeah. Dichter's hotel was the media center where the entire team of media people were working. And Tamara would pop by every couple of days just to make sure everything was okay. We'd be messaging each other all day and whatever. So a bunch of them came in, and boy, were they upset. They were not happy with me or other people. And I remember thinking, who the hell's side are these people on? Like, the convoy's going great. We have so much leverage over the government, but all they wanted to do was to distract from the momentum and derail our momentum. And it's like, well, are you on our side or not? Like, it was so frustrating. Like, oh, we're a doctor of this and that. And like, okay, great. You know nothing about media strategy, so you can go be a doctor. I'll deal with the media strategy. Thank you. Have a nice day. So this was the constant sabotage that was going on daily that we had to deal with and endure. And it was causing a lot of stress around myself and around Tamara. And you can tell they were trying to capture Tamara and get her to buy into, oh, no, let's do our media strategy and our narrative. And I'm like, just Tamara, just ignore them, tell them to go away, because all they're going to do is disrupt our progress. But anyways, okay, a couple of questions on here. Hello from Avril. Good morning from the GTA. Avril, I love your name. That's awesome. It's very close to Avro, like Avro Arrow. Kiss Chucky, somehow I missed this and just tuning in now. Well, good morning, dear. It's good to see you. And congratulations again on getting your job. Christine was very upset when I saw her to sign a bunch of copies of my book for her, which is on the shelf back there, Honking For Freedom. And she was struggling to get a job because of vaccine mandates, and she finally did. So let's all collectively celebrate for her, and hopefully she's doing great. Miss Cheryl, you're so smart. No, I know how the political apparatus, which we're now calling Big Con Canada Inc., I know how they work. I know all the NGOs and fake organizations and proxy organizations and YouTubers and podcasters that they sprinkle money around here and there, $500 there, $1,000 there, or we'll promote your tweet, we'll promote your episode to leverage everybody just to buy in to a narrative that the Conservative Party, controlled by lobbyists, wants you to think. That's how it is. So I've been in this long enough that I can understand how it all works. And I guess, running companies in the past and their marketing divisions, I'm used to this. Interesting information I'm learning today. Didn't know she requested to meet. Is that Candace Bergen? Yeah, I've talked about it a bunch of times. I guess you weren't in one of the meetings. And it was totally a setup. It was totally a setup. And there were so many attempts at setting us up, and I kept batting them down. And that's why you hear, oh, Dichter's a Fed. Yeah, no, because Dichter took their heads and shoved it up their own ass and told them, no, you can go home. You're not needed here. What we need to do is end mandates and end the ArriveCan app. So all the proxies and all the pawns and all the people, many of them don't understand they don't understand the mechanism of how the messaging comes to them to manipulate them to attack other people. So it's not necessarily their fault. But they're so easy to predict. They're just like the lefties who are postmodern. The people on the right in politics, the political people, are the same. They work the same way. They attack, they defame, they destroy people's reputations, and then when they think they have enough momentum, they turn quiet. And if it starts up again, if people start to question the narrative, then they play the victim card, which is what you saw earlier this week when one of the stooges for Big Con Canada Inc. started playing the victim card and, oh, there's divisiveness online. Well, if you didn't sabotage the convoy, then perhaps we wouldn't have any sort of divisiveness. And, it's good to be divisive because, as Churchill said, if you have enemies, good. It means you stood up for something at some point in your life. So, anyways. Kiss Junkie, thank you. Jesse, yeah, I was, it was in the paper for the inquiry and included in the testimony, the conversation Bergen had with Trudeau, ending the convoy. The inquiry said so, much people missed it. Yeah, there's a lot of, because the commission was so dense, there's a lot of nuance that was met by some people, and that's just what it is. And it's going to, over time, as real journalists like Reg, like the guys at the National Telegraph, as they start to uncover this sort of stuff, the truth will come out over time. It's just because it's so dense in the volume of information. Is there a list of Big Con Inc.? It's Big Con Canada Inc., because it's a different problem than what happened with Daily Wire and Crowder. That's just a contractual disagreement, and they'll figure it out. In Big Con Canada Inc., I explained this in my live stream yesterday, the mechanisms in the U.S. are completely different than in Canada. And when I was in Florida and meeting with some people from Mar-a-Lago, they were explaining to me how the mechanism operates in the U.S. and why it's a little bit of a challenge that the political parties in Canada don't need to deal with. Because in Canada, it's top-down. In the United States, it's bottom-up. But I'll get into that in more detail. So is there a list of Big Con Canada Inc.? Well, you know what? I'm using all my devices right now. I'm actually working on a chart to lay out, and I will lay it out over time. I'm thinking maybe we can. I have a little I have an idea how we're going to unveil this, and I think people will enjoy it. It's going to be very interesting because I want your input too. So I'm charting it all out, the entire network of BigCon Canada Inc. and how it all operates, since they won't stop defaming myself and other people, and we're all left hanging without any of our legal fees paid for in this class action suit, and BigCon Canada Inc. has hoarded the money for themselves to prop up one or two people and screw the rest of us truckers and the rest of us who helped build the Freedom Convoy. So it's going to take time to put, because it's really complex, it's quite big. There's organizations in terms of proxy organizations, NGOs, obviously political parties, more than one, by the way, and individuals and individual donors that are connected to the financial sector, that are connected to other areas of business that funnel millions of dollars into this apparatus to help to control the messaging. Something I learned when I got into politics, you hear that phrase in the conservative movement from the establishment, from the organization all the time. We need to control the messaging. Yeah, because they do such a good job with messaging. They win so many elections. Revolving door of losers. They really are. Barb says, how do you think the inquiry will rule in the end? Well, as Diverge Media's, what's it called? Diverge Media uploaded a little segment from Keith Wilson, who was supposed to be the lawyer for the JCCF. That's very key, by the way, to be representing or to be helping the truckers. As he said when he was asked, and Viva Frei missed this, and I was very annoyed that Viva Frei did not push him on this, where Keith Wilson was asked specifically about people that were fringe elements in the Freedom Convoy, and were fringe elements attracted to the Freedom Convoy. So, by the way, that's you. That's you. You're the fringe elements according to BigCon Canada Inc. And Keith Wilson responded, "Oh, absolutely, like moths to a flame." And they gave a couple of examples of different people that might have been a little bit eccentric, and that's fine, but I wouldn't describe the vast majority of you as fringe. And if I was asked, let me put it this way: if I was, and was supposed to be had been the lawyer representing his client who did this. If I was asked, was the Freedom Convoy, did it attract fringe elements? I would say it attracted all Canadians who value their freedom and their autonomy. That's who it was attracted to. Everybody who wants to have freedom, but also is open-minded and have a willingness to interact with people who disagree with them and focus on peace and love, unity and freedom. And that's why we had barbecues and soup kitchens and bouncy castles and all. That's how I would have answered the question. I wouldn't have said, oh, absolutely, agreeing with Trudeau's lawyer. Because what did Trudeau's lawyer do with that? Well, in his closing statements, he quoted Keith Wilson and said, even the Convoy lawyers agreed that the Convoy attracted fringe elements. That is horrible. Like, that is what Trudeau wants the people. That's why it is BigCon Canada Inc. It is the conservative apparatus, the political class that will work with the Liberal Party to ensure that they're the ones who are in control and you don't have a voice. And if you do have a voice, you're going to parrot what they want you to say. And anybody else gets the smear. Oh, he's a government op. Oh, she's a Fed. Oh, they're stealing money. Oh, that's why they do this, right? Anyways, I don't mean to seem so feisty today. Again, I'm not angry. It's just, I'm passionate. What can I tell you? I'm passionate about freedom. We all have our faults. Oh my God, has anyone seen on Twitter the psychic that claims that they started the convoy months before Bridget. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, listen, there's going to be, there's two ways to think about it. There's the one way, Jesse, is to say, yeah, there's people who are whatever. But then the other part is people were just inspired by it and they want to relive that moment. So I don't, I posted that video that Jordan Peterson retweeted telling people to please, no convoys, nothing like that, nothing in Ottawa on the anniversary and close to the anniversary. Don't, because the government is desperate for a boogeyman. This is part of managing blowback and managing messaging. Trust me on this. I'm pretty good at this, as you can tell, because the Freedom Con, my media strategy took us global, right? And so many of you helped with that media strategy, by the way, by running your Twitter spaces and by engaging with each other and doing YouTube videos. Like, I couldn't have done it without you. I just put together the strategy, hoping that I would put it out there and seed it enough that everybody would take it on, and so many of you did. So I am eternally grateful for that. But that's why I did that video that Peterson retweeted about, where was I? I was in the Mohawk Valley. I was doing a 30-minute reset on my brake in my truck. And just to convey to people that the government needs a boogeyman, right? They need a boogeyman to point to say, look, see, there are the fringe elements that Keith Wilson was talking about. There they are right there in Ottawa yet again. And if you do that, then what do you think is going to happen going into this next election that's supposed to be happening in the spring? And so back to your question about what do I think, Barb, about what do I think is going to happen in Commissioner Rouleau's ruling. I think he's going to do what happens in Canadian politics, which is it's going to be right down the middle and it's going to have no teeth. Maybe I'm wrong. It'll be truckers bad, government bad, don't do it again, and here are suggested changes to the Emergency Measures Act. Because he didn't want to get involved in this. He didn't want to get involved in all the class action stuff and whatever. Like, he's going to want to make recommendations for law that will have an effect on Canadian jurisprudence for the future to better our judicial system. You got to take the frame of a judge, how they think, and that's all he's going to do. So I don't think people are saying, oh, it's going to be for or against. I think it's going to be neither. It's just going to be everybody was bad, everybody made mistakes, and this is what we need to change in the future. Wilson blocked me on Twitter. Guess he doesn't like the truth. Wilson blocks anybody who asks questions. By the way, I do have that live stream of where I tore Wilson and what's his name? Hurt Locker Marazzo, or as friends of mine call him, Mozzarella. He tearing both of them an a-hole, and then they just constant distortion of the facts and constant deflection, wouldn't answer any questions, and then my lawyer Jim Karahalios came into the Twitter space. And then they all ran. It's hysterical. So I'm thinking about posting that in a stream, but I got to be careful because Keith did repeat his defamatory messages, his defamatory claims against me. He did it under parliamentary protection during the commission, but then he repeated the unfactual defamatory statements. Maybe he made a mistake, but he did that in a Twitter space. So I'm probably going to hold on to that. When I make a decision if I'm going to pursue this legally and with the Alberta Bar Association. But that's, there's so many things on my plate right now. But the other half where, it's nothing but, deflection and manipulation of the facts. And then when Jim comes in, and again, this is in the capacity of a lawyer, right? This is not the capacity of a political person. And you can tell that he's in lawyer mode when he explains it. I'm thinking about putting that on a live stream video, drinking party, Saturday night, whatever. We can all talk about it and have some jokes and kind of further the conversation and help many of you understand more about how Big Con Canada Inc. works. So I hope that helps. We all want to relive the moment of the convoy. I understand, 100%. but we will never relive the moment in real time. It'll always be in our hearts. Go with that and spread that love. It's all like a murderer. It's like a murderer. That's a weird analogy, but okay. Okay, Paula. They're always trying to relive their first kill, the adrenaline high. So find it in your heart and use it for all the good. Well, thank you, Paula. And yeah, that's the thing. We're never going to relive the moment. We're never going to experience the same moment. The best way to relive it is, hold on, I'll give you a good way. 1 second. All right, so this is a really good way of reliving the experience of the Freedom Convoy and getting additional, for those of you on Twitter Spaces, I'm holding up my book, honkingforfreedom.com. This is all the positive stories, all the good stuff. There's a lot of additional insight that people have never heard before, but we've designed it as a tool to also reach people who were not necessarily listening, people who didn't understand the importance of the Freedom Convoy, or they bought into the narrative from the fake news and Big Con Canada Inc. This will help inoculate them to that sort of stuff. And I know it's worked in a few cases of people within my social circles, so I'm now even more confident to recommending it. And Paula, I did get your message the other day and thanked you online. One of the few times I was on Facebook. For Paula just got the book the other day and told me she's excited to read it. So Paula, thank you very much. And please send me a DM after you read the book and tell me your thoughts and what you think. All right. I greatly appreciate it. Okay. Okay. So I want to get into the thumbnail and one more thing, and then we'll get into questions and comments. And then maybe if anybody has, this is an experiment. I don't know how this is going to work. Maybe the sound quality is going to be horrible, but I'll take a couple of questions from Twitter Spaces if anybody has any questions on Twitter Space, and hopefully that will all work in locals. You'll hear it, and you'll hear it in the encoder and whatever. Bess says Liberal Party and Conservative Party both wanted the convoy to end. Absolutely. That's what we saw in the email evidence. Now, who is trying to destroy democracy? They did not want to talk to Canadians. You know, the democracy live in action. Yeah, no, I agree. And we cannot relive the moment, but we can cherish the moment 100%. Love, peace, union, and freedom. And we saw experience during Canada's Supreme Love Fest, a.k.a. Canada's Freedom Convoy. Yeah, that's another thing. You know, I have some people, John's a good example. We're talking about it in the spring. There are people out west who want to obviously not only relive the experience, but they want additional insight. So he's asked me if I would consider flying out west and meeting with a bunch of people, maybe doing a talk and signing some books and us getting together. I'm sure you all have lots of questions beyond the book and everything else, and I'm here for you. Like, if you want to do that and you want to get together and have a little event or whatever, like I've been doing a lot of Bitcoin events. But if you want to do anything, I'm here. Just let me know. Reach out, and that's why I'm trying to get dispatches all over the U.S. and different places where they want me to go. Okay, so the cartoon that I put up earlier, and I'm gonna see if I can. Can I get it here? Yeah, I know I took a shot of it. Yes. Hold on. Let me find. I know. Hold on 1 second. This is relevant to all that we're talking about, and this is going to be even more relevant moving forward. So I snipped this cartoon as I'm going to just switch over to the screen. If you're on YouTube, you'll see it. If you're on Twitter Spaces or on locals, because their encoders work differently, I will figure out a solution eventually, I promise. But for right now, I'm going to put on the screen here. And I will read it for you, though, who are in audio. And those of you who are in video, you can, I hope, see it. I hope it's big enough. Let me make it as big as I can. So this is from Scott Adams, who writes Dilbert, and who is in the crosshairs from lots of people on either side who don't listen to him in his full context. which is common, happens to me as well. And it's Dilbert and his boss. All right. So those of you who are on Twitter Spaces and Locals, I'll read it out for you. And Beth, if you're on Locals, if you go to, I know you know how to post stuff during a stream. If you go to Dilbert on Twitter, it's the latest Dilbert comic. I think it's pinned. So if you want to put it in the chat, Beth, I would appreciate it. That would be helpful. Okay. So the two of them walking, it's the conversation, what's important. He says, what's your long-term career plan, ASOC? And he says, well, I'm a rational person who responds to incentives. So I plan to work as little as possible while still getting paid and then the next panel. Until climate change turns the planet into a growing ember in approximately 3 years. And then Dilbert says to him, give me your phone. And they trade phones. Gilbert takes out a hammer and smashes the phone. And his ASOC says, thank you. And Dilbert's response, you're free. Now, the reason I think that is relevant to everything that we're seeing is, and I responded to Scott Adams, who I've spoken to a couple of times privately in DMs, who's been great. And he retweeted that Peterson video and really helped out with getting the word out on Peterson and what's happening with the psychologist organization. I said this to him. I said, Scott, is that the issue? Are people easily fooled because they receive propaganda on a device that stores all their personal information, their secrets, and their emotional experiences? That would explain a lot. And this is my thesis that I'm thinking about, and I see Guillaume is in the Twitter space. And Guillaume and I seem to always, we converge on some of this sort of stuff, on humanity, and understanding human emotions and why they're important and all that sort of stuff. And this is kind of just to expand on what I'm suggesting. I think, John Goddard, let me start it this way. John Goddard, who helped me with the book, was a journalist for 30 years and a published author and a good friend of mine. When we were putting together the book and he was looking through all the evidence and we're doing the timelines and stuff, he put out a tweet that said, why is it that people who won't believe anything they read in the mainstream media will swallow anything on the internet? And I think this might be why. Most of the internet now people communicate with the internet through mobile, okay? Now that's the crust of it. That's why it's important, I think. And I learned this years ago when I met the guys, the CEO and the people who run ThinkSpot. When I met, when I was at James Altucher's house and met Ari and a bunch of people who were working there, and they were explaining to me, even that time, that was 3 years ago now, that 80% of all internet traffic was mobile. Okay. Now, let's think in terms of human beings, right? We are emotional beings. We make emotional decisions. And you hear Adams talk about this frequently. I think Cialdini was one of the first people to really popularize this. This is a common understanding about people in sort of the NLP space, that we make emotional decisions and we post-rationalize those emotional decisions. We think we're logical, but we're not. That's just how we are. That's why the scientific method is important, because it's supposed to be a hedge against our emotional biases, but even that's been exploited now, as we've seen with the cerveza sickness over the past few years and the narratives around it. But I think maybe that might be part of the point. So for me, part of the problem. For me, my phone is an extension of my brain. And when I say my phone, it's my phone, my iPad, my computer, and my ecosystem, like how it all interacts. I don't remember things. I put everything down in to-do lists, Kanban boards, all that sort of stuff. So I spend most of my time on creative thinking, right? So methodology I learned many, many years ago when I was running a business a number of years ago. And so because of that, what does your phone become? It becomes an extension of your brain. It becomes an extension of your emotions. and it becomes an extension of who you are. It becomes almost, not for everybody. I know there's lots of people who hate their phones. I get that. But I think for the majority of people, they don't even realize it. It becomes something that they have an emotional attachment to because their whole life is stored in it. Nobody knows more about you than your phone because your phone is you. That's you taking your pictures of your family, you making posts, you putting friends in there. And I think we have, there might be some disruptions in the wirings of our brains that when we look at our phones, we're more apt to believing what we see. And it doesn't matter what it is. Coupled to the fact that I had this conversation with somebody earlier today who I care very much about, that our search engines, whether it's Google or DuckDuckGo or whatever it is, it's a confirmation bias machine because the internet is so vast. You can find any opinion you want, any opinion. Doesn't matter if it's on the cerveza sickness, any opinion. Any data you want to support your opinion, you can find through a search engine, which is just a confirmation bias machine, right? It's how are you searching stuff? And the words that you put into that phrase is going to generate a response more in line with what you're seeking. And I think that's why it's so easy for so many people, obviously not everybody, but it's so easy for so many people to adopt these fake narratives, some of which come from Big Con Canada Inc. And they're using it to manipulate you, just like the liberals are doing it, just like the progressives are doing it. They're all doing it, right? And if you already have some sort of bias and are in that state where you have the inability to change your mind in a subject, and we all have that. We all have topics that we'll never change our mind on. But I'm hoping we all have a whole bunch of topics that we are open to hearing the other side and willing to change our mind on, right? So I think that's the exploit of technology. I'd hold up my phone right now if I had my US phone with me. I think that's the strategic advantage for all of these narratives to get people to promulgate something that they might not know if it's true or not, right? It is what it is. So that's why I thought this Dilbert cartoon is so relevant, because that's what we're seeing is Big Con Canada Inc. utilizing this network and infrastructure of money, NGOs, proxy organizations, YouTubers, bloggers, Twitter spacers, whatever, to adopt their narrative that they got through their phone and then repeat it and regurgitate it to everybody else to kind of grow the messaging. And it's more difficult in the United States, as people explained to me when I was down there, because in the United States, they have this issue in the political parties. You know, you have the, they call them the Rhino Republicans. Because in the United States, you don't just have a Republican leadership that can just say, no, you're thrown out of the party. They actually have to deal with it. And that's why the political apparatus doesn't have the same level of control as in Canada, where the leader of any political party can just decide, you're disqualified, you're out, everybody's now going to call you a Fed, and we're going to utilize public shaming to destroy you, which is what the lefties should be. The lefties do. That's what the communists did. That's what they did. That's what Lenin and Mao did. Well, now we're getting it across all sides, but instead of public shaming in the analog world, they're utilizing your cell phone to do it. Does that make sense? And we're more apt to believing it because of the intimate relationship we have with all the information on the device. And again, this is subconscious. This is not conscious. This is your subconscious mind working. That everything in there, you know, all those emotional ties to your kids and your family and your parents, the people you love, it's all stored in that device. How could this other information that's coming through this same apparatus, how could it be lying to me? Or at least you're subconsciously going to be more apt to believing it, right? So, I don't know. What do you think? You'll tell me in a second. And I think that's how the I'm talking more and more about Big Con Canada Inc., and I will be utilizing the same media over time to lay out all of Big Con Inc. for all of you to understand why anytime there seems to be a movement that you believe in that might be antithetical to the political class because it forces them to make a decision or take a side, just dies. Like the Yellow Vest movement. What happened to the Yellow Vest movement? It became a global phenomenon. The political class got a hold of it, labeled it as racist, divide and conquer, and then the movement dies. What happened with the Freedom Convoy? We all went to Ottawa. We celebrated freedom and love. We didn't talk about, this is why I didn't want to talk about cerveza medicine, because that just divides people, right? But freedom and love unifies people. And every day I had political operatives threatening me, trying to attack me, trying to defame me, trying to drive a wedge between me and Tamara. Every day I dealt with that crap. And I kept beating them down and explaining to them, you will never win this war against the people who are trying to control every element of your life if you allow yourself to be divided. We need to be able to reach people on the other side, our friends and our neighbors who disagree with us. They will not agree with us on many issues. Like I said before, we all have issues that once we've decided will never change our mind. But we need to talk about the issues of which we are open to. And freedom and love and peace and unity are those pillars that I knew everybody is open to talking one another based on that foundation. And that's why I chose that as the messaging strategy for the Freedom Convoy. And that's why I was so happy when I got there. One of the first signs I saw I remember being a teenager and going to Grateful Dead concerts and Allman Brother concerts and Bob Dylan concerts and you name it. And I remember I saw these 3 girls with a peace sign dressed in tie-dye. It was like straight out of a Dead concert. And I thought, it worked. We now have people from across the spectrum. And then I saw Quebecers with Canadian flags and the fleur-de-lis. And then later that day, I did an interview with a journalist from Quebec who works for a French organization. And at the end of the interview, she says to me, when I asked her, we finished our interview, and then I asked her, okay, so what are your thoughts, because she's being an objective journalist. What are your thoughts about the Freedom Convoy, and how has it affected you and your family and whatever? Because I'm kind of interpersonal like that. And she said to me, I used to be a separatist. I can't believe it. But 2 weeks ago, when I saw the truckers coming across the country, and I saw that you were just focusing on loving each other and giving us all our freedoms, and it wasn't politically partisan and all that sort of stuff, she said, I bought my first flag ever in my life, and I am no longer a separatist. That's why I didn't focus on cerveza sickness, data, and medicine, right? Howard talks about, let me just shut this down so I can see you guys. Sorry. Howard says instant gratification. That's part of it. And what's really difficult is trying to force yourself out of instant gratification for habits that you have that are built upon that. I try that regularly, and it's surprisingly difficult. Alyssa, there's a whole generation that gets their news through memes. Memes are very, very powerful, and we should be utilizing them as well. I actually have some memes I have planned for sometime in February, which Prime Minister Blackface is not going to like, but it is what it is. And agreed, because memes are quick, they're effective, and they're visual. And nothing beats visual persuasion. That's why I tell you about the Canadian flag and the fleur-de-lis both being held by one person, because that's a visual experience that says a lot, that anybody who's Canadian can understand the significance of that. Cheryl says, great conversation. Well, thank you, Cheryl. I love you. You guys are great. James Top, same things. Yeah, James Top was part of Big Con Canada Inc. That's who paid for James Top. And sorry, guys, but that's what that was. That's why you saw in the very beginning James Top. What did he say? What did he say? He said on the CTV News, I think it was. I managed to catch this. Somebody posted it. What did he say? He said, I'm not part of any convoy. I'm not part of Freedom Convoy, right? Is that how you would have answered that? I know how I would have answered it. I would have said, the unity and love of the Freedom Convoy inspired me to do this walk across the country. But he didn't do that. He distanced himself from it. Why? Big Con Canada Inc. And like all of these things, if you want to, if you don't believe me, you're skeptical, whatever, I get it. Listen, I'm skeptical too, and I'm glad you are. Follow the money. Follow the money, and then you'll end up with the same chart that I'll be presenting to all of you over the next 6 months that will explain all of this and help it make sense to you, right? Alyssa says in the memes, and they can spread quickly. Yes, they can. Sonia, who was the Quebec journalist? Let me see. Her name is, you know what? I have her picture. Her name is, I have her in my signal. She's very sweet. Her name is Eloise, and I don't know her last name, but I can find it out. She posted these. I don't know which French publication it was. I speak Spanish, not French. Sorry. Bad Canadian. But she did it for a French magazine. And in France, by the way, that ended up helping to inspire a freedom convoy in France that had something like 10,000 trucks, I think it was. And they basically blocked off the Arc de Triomphe and caused, a massive protest in Paris. So what did the French government do? They came out and they tear gassed them all. They tear gassed all the truckers. And that was just before the same thing was done in Canada. But anyways, I'll find you her name. And you know what? I'll send her a message and ask her for the link of the publication that she's working for. Okay, so comments and questions. I just jotted down one question. And then if anybody wants to ask a question, vocally on Twitter, then go ahead. Just request to speak, and if not, then we won't. But if you want to, great. Again, this is just an experiment. And for those of you who are watching me all the time, I'll be here regularly. I was thinking of maybe doing a space tonight, by the way, with some people, but I'm not sure if everybody's available. I will be doing them, and I was in Mayor Newfell's Twitter space when I was in Boston on the stage talking about some of this stuff as well. And so I'm always around, as you know that. Okay, so this was from Frank. He says, the Freedom Corp PM cross-examination. Okay, so the Freedom Corp, this is he's talking about during the commission itself, and the kind of the jurisprudence and argumentation and legal representation during the commission. This is what he says. He says, I guess there's a response. The Freedom Corp Prime Minister, so Trudeau cross-examination, was uniquely weak and useless. My jaw was on the floor. And yes, I agree. And so he believes that the cross-examination of Trudeau was completely ineffectual and useless. And it was useless because it was a legal environment. It wasn't YouTube and it wasn't a vlog. But everybody who was there seemed to be trying to play to YouTube and YouTube clips instead of actually practicing law. And actually, Daniel Borman posted a thing on Twitter, I think that night, if I'm not mistaken. I always remember it's etched in my mind. He said, straight from the horse's mouth. And it was from Keith Wilson. It was his tweet that said, we made the decision to switch from legal argumentation to political argumentation. I can't remember what he said exactly, but I do remember seeing it, and something to the fact that he admitted we switched from legal arguments to political arguments, and he gave some excuse for it. It wasn't a political forum. Yes, it was highly politicized. We know that, but in terms of Canadian jurisprudence and how it affects generations of Canadians in the future, that's why it's important to practice law. yeah, you want to get some YouTube clips, whatever. In the future, that's not going to be relevant. What's going to be relevant is how the law was adjudicated on, and that negatively impacted that. And I was really kind of curious about that. Oh, Yana's here. Okay, Yana, what's up? I'm going to bring Yana up on stage if I can. How do I? Of course, Twitter's always glitchy. And, Yana's here. She's a speaker. So let me turn the volume up. Hold on 1 second. Well, hopefully all of you will be able to hear it. Let me move it closer to the mic. And let's see. Yana, are you here? Can we hear you?
Yeah. Hey, what's up?
Hey, what's up? How are you?
Good morning, freedom people. Good morning. I was tutoring a young lady in French this morning, and that's why I couldn't attend the beginning. And she had like a fallout with a friend, so I had to like mentor her through that. And then we got a chance to talk about the convoy and about freedom and about what I was going to do after our session. And she was fascinated. She'd never heard about it. And she's probably like 15 years old. And you know me, BJ, I'm very curious about how we're going to reach out to the young people. Because they matter so much. And I'm wondering, when you're going around speaking, are you seeing that young person, that 18 to 35-year-old? Like, they're not homeowners yet. They don't have portfolios. It's not hitting them in the same way. They may have not even entered the workforce yet. Let me know. Let us know.
Yeah, the short answer is yes. And a good example would be, Jeff brought his son. When I spoke in Boston, and then I was asked to come down to meet Jason Lowry. If you don't know who he is, you can search him online. He's in U.S. Space Force, formerly Air Force, and working on Bitcoin and communicating to DOD, White House, all that sort of stuff. He's true military, so he's not partisan. It's just about his issue. He's trying to get the government to understand. So I went down there for the Lowry talk and to meet him, and I missed our steak dinner, unfortunately. But Jeff, who helps organize it, he brought his son, who is 16 years old. The people who are in that room, it was interesting. You have a lot of people who are in the financial services industry who are starting to open up to Bitcoin, and then you have a lot of developers and younger people. What is missing, and that's more on the Bitcoin side of things, right? And there's a lot of crossover in terms of political philosophy about freedom with people who are in Bitcoin and people who supported the Freedom Convoy. The people in Bitcoin understand that. Many people in the freedom movement don't understand that. And when I try to tell people, they say, "Oh, Dichter's a Fed." Like, okay, what do you want? All right, fine. You can go, live with your Trudeau bucks, sort of thing. But the point is, yes, I do see that. The problem I do see, and now I'm going to sound like a leftist and progressive, but I'm not. Believe me. The one thing there is lacking are women, and I think that's just because, as Peterson talks about, when you live in an egalitarian society like Sweden, when men and women have choices, there's actually less interest in STEM, and people kind of go more towards their. I don't want to say it incorrectly, so I'm gonna just you understand what I'm getting at. That in an egalitarian society, it seems to be a lot of women do take more traditional roles, which is fine. I'm for freedom. People take whatever roles they want, but I think the only thing that's lacking in that community, and I've told them, I've spoken to them about it, is the lack of women in the Bitcoin space. Everybody knows that, but it's a good metric to show that that's where we can grow. And I don't anticipate we shouldn't be forcing women to become Bitcoin developers. But there's a lot of women who are in the freedom movement, a lot, which was great. And it was amazing. I never got an analytics distribution on, engagement from men versus women on the freedom movement, because I didn't really care, but at the same time, it was so refreshing to see that in this organic movement around this basic philosophical principle of freedom, it wasn't something you could carve up based on, any sort of gender ideology or identity politics. That's what's so happy when I saw the Sikh community come out, and Sikhs for Truth and all these other different groups. I don't know them, but I do know that they were open and they came out in our defense and said everything the media is saying is a lie. We're all from different backgrounds and groups, and we came to Canada to be Canadian. Oops, hold on one second. Sorry if that interrupted. They made many statements online. They came to Canada to be Canadian and to have freedom and to love each other. It doesn't matter who is there, right? And that's why I get so angry and so upset with the what's it called, boycott Scotiabank, and the guy who was causing so much I want to say controversy, friction within some people amongst the truckers, because he would just go out and talk behind all of us, behind our backs, when all we were trying to do is just try to help everybody, right? And yet, let's go help this guy. Like, it's so frustrating. But, and then when I try to say, then why don't you adopt Bitcoin, this decentralized money that nobody controls? It's like, he's a Fed. Like, okay, here we go. Big Con Canada Inc. And one thing Big Con Canada Inc. doesn't like seems to be Bitcoin. All right, we have one more person who wants to come up, Ellie, and if we're done after her, we'll call it a day. All right, Ellie, go ahead. Oh, and I'll get back to the anybody else lose sound? I don't think Paula. I don't think so, but you'll tell me. All right, Ellie is on stage, and if you want to ask a question, you can go ahead and ask. And let me see. And also, Lisa says, my son was at every protest I went to over the past 3 years. I did. It hid with the I hid what the government was it hid what the government was doing to us. I hid what the government. I did what. I did hide what the government was doing to us from my children. I don't think you should. I really don't think you should. But I'm not going to tell you how to be a parent. It's not my business. But you got to teach your children how the world really works. Maybe that's. People ask me a bunch of times. Like, my parents were very open growing up as kids when my brother and I were kids. And there was nothing that was censored if we didn't want to. My parents thought we need to be prepared for the world, and we need to know that the world can be a very cruel place, but it can be an amazing place if you make it that way. So I think, Lisa, your kids need to understand exactly what was going on, and not to fearmonger them about the government, but just to understand it's an apparatus. It is an infrastructure. It's like a corporation. It can be used for good, or it could be used for bad, or it could be what it's supposed to be, which is completely neutral and preferably as small as possible. Anyways, Ellie, you want to say something?
Hi, everyone. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks, BJ, for hosting this. I've been reading the Freedom Convoy book by Andrew Lawton, and it's fascinating. Anyway, the event for me was just so inspirational. I wasn't able to go to Ottawa,
Okay.
but standing on a bridge in Milton and waving a flag with all these other, and just to see the number of people that were on bridges across.
We just lost you. Ellie, you still there? Ellie. Ellie, we lost you. If you guys on Twitter can hear Ellie, great. I can't hear her, so nobody on the stream can hear her. Oh, wait, are you there now?
Oh, I'm here now.
Okay, no, there you are. So, do you mind starting again? I'm sorry.
Starting all again, or what part did you leave off at?
When you mentioned Milton, and then you cut out.
Oh, okay. So just remembering how great it felt to see everybody standing on these bridges across the country and waving flags, for all of us that couldn't go to Ottawa. To celebrate that, a group of us are having an event on Sunday, January the 29th in Oakville. So on the Trafalgar Road Bridge that goes over QEW,
Yeah.
from noon to 2 p.m., nothing, long, outrageous. And we're just going to be waving flags and celebrating freedom and getting together with people in our local community, which I think is going to be really important going forward. And I'm really hoping that some people here can come and support that, or if you want to have a similar event in your neighborhood, I've written something up that I can send to you. Just some guidelines to show unity, guidelines for signage and stuff like that. I know there's a couple of other events planned. One I know of in BC on the 29th, and there's another one, I think, in York. Hussein might be able to answer that. There was another woman on another chat room talking about that. But anyway, it's just a very organic, grassroots, locally led event, and I think it's an important message to show that this feeling, this movement hasn't died, that the government wasn't able to squash it, and that there's still a lot of people that support this idea, especially in light of Bill C-11 coming down the pipe, the Jordan Peterson thing, and the what's that pandemic treaty that's being, I think it's been signed with
in
the
BC.
WHO and the WEF. All of these things, we know that this is not over, and this is almost like the calm before the storm. So people are a little complacent right now because things are fine, but I think little get-togethers like this send a powerful message and are just a nice little thing. No money being transacted. We're just collecting food for the local food bank and giving people an opportunity to meet locally, wave some flags, and have a good day.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you for that, and that's awesome. And if you can DM me something about it, and I'll post it as well for people. There's going to be
I did.
Okay. There's going to be a bunch of different groups that are getting together that are either doing overpasses or what I was hoping or suggesting that people. It's more for Valentine's Day, but to celebrate in that sort of way. People are going to be doing a whole bunch of celebrations across the country during this whole period. And I think, Bill C, all these issues are like, I know people want to collectivize them and clump them together just to make it easier. And I get that and I understand it. But I think there's some progress in certain areas. And it's better that we distinguish each one. That's more of a threat to the government if we're on top of each, egregious encroachment in our lives. That's going to be beneficial. And unfortunately, to be proactive is, unless you have a lobby group that's doing it for you, what the Freedom Convoy did, it was reactive, right? And it was reactive because it pushed people over the edge and they were able to amass. It's very difficult to amass people for a movement when it's proactive. That's just the nature of how human beings are, unfortunately. With C-11, from what I understand, it's being massively watered down by members or former liberal members of the Senate who were also in opposition to the EMA. So from what I understand, there's been a lot of changes that have been put into it that make it have absolutely no teeth. And it's being sent back to the House that way, and so this is going to be a political football that's going to be bouncing back and forth. And we do have the likelihood of being into an election in the spring. I thought it would have been before the end of the year, as I posted to my Substack, by the way, BJdichter.substack.com. So hopefully I was just off by a few months. And if we go into an election, I don't think it's going to fare well for the blackface regime. I think you can run a toaster against Prime Minister Blackface, and the toaster would win at this point. That's the reality on the ground. And then Bill C-11 will likely die as a result. The Jordan Peterson thing is, I mean, Jordan emailed myself and a whole bunch of us when that happened and said, I want to go public with all of this stuff. And all of us were on it. Like Russell was on it. Rogan was on this list. Like we're all in this email list together. And that's why we're all trying to do our best to speak out on his behalf. I think that's taken on a life of its own. And that's having a ripple effect in other institutions who feel as though it's their right to dictate what their members think politically. And Jordan's strategy of reaching out to all of us to speak on this issue or write about the issue or whatever, it's done a lot, and it was an effective pushback. And in terms of the BC bill, because it's a provincial bill, we haven't seen the effects of it, and people in BC, as you know, tend to view government, well, not people in BC, people in the cities, in Vancouver and Victoria, have zero skepticism of their government, which is a problem. Thank God for people in Kelowna and rural BC and northern BC and Dawson Creek and stuff like that. Like, they get it, they understand, and there's a lot of people there that's talking about it. So I think the seeds are there to, if it starts to encroach more on people's lives, then we'll be able to address that too. Right now, I think what we need to focus on, at least from my perspective, and maybe I'm wrong, this is just my perspective, I think we need to focus on all of us who truly are not political animals, meaning we're not tied to any political parties. We don't care about, red versus blue. We don't have a binary view of the world. I'm not part of a cult. I don't think most of you are here. I think we need to address this very serious issue of Big Con Canada Inc., who will disrupt any momentum that any groups will get in fighting Bill C-11 or fighting any of these other issues. And when we address that while simultaneously bringing as many of us together from all sides of the political spectrum, then we'll be able to have a lot more influence and be able to persuade not just the politicians and elected officials, but the bureaucracy, and most important, the lobbyists that are dragging our politicians off this leftist cliff, if I can describe it that way, for monetary gain, which is what you see in the WF. I posted the last comment I'm going to say, if there's nothing else, and I'll read your comments and call it a day. Posted a video from a YouTuber I've been watching for many, many, many years. His YouTube channel is Romanian TV, and he does this video on the World Economic Forum yesterday, comparing it to the video game Command and Conquer. You don't have to be a video gamer to understand this is the funniest thing you'll ever see. And when it comes to the WEF, mockery will be the end of the WF. The more of us who start to make fun of it and show it as a clown show and show it as more totalitarianism, and that we have this other option called Bitcoin, and we don't need to participate. I'm not shilling for Bitcoin, by the way. I'm just shilling for freedom. That we have alternatives to this system that they use to control us through these authoritarian means. And if they continue, we're just going to mock and laugh at them and get more and more people around the world mocking and laughing at them. Then their power and their influence and their persuasion is going to dwindle over time. So I'm very optimistic about things, right? But send me that thing in a DM. I'll post it, and I want to do something during this time period as well. I want to come out and meet some of you. For me, it was amazing that finally, when I got back in my truck, which once my ankle healed enough and I was cleared to go back in the truck in June, I was coming back from my first trip. I think it was to Connecticut. And I crossed over into Canada, and what did I see under the bridge? And there was one in Niagara and one in Grimsby. I saw Canadians with freedom, the Canadian flag, clearly supporters of the Freedom Convoy, collected on the bridge, waving their flags. And that was the first time, because when I went to Ottawa early and I went in my car, that was the first time I had an experience being in my truck, driving under the overpass, people waving flags in support of freedom. And it was an amazing moment because this time last year, I was working day and night on messaging strategies to try to get as much attention on the Freedom Convoy as possible. Because Tamara called me, I think it was the 15th, and I started basically right away. And I was just knee deep into it at this point. It's all I was working on. And they were driving across, it was on the 20th, it would be 2 days from now, that Tamara and the rest of them started driving across the country. I mean, BC already started already. So they met up on the 24th and continued the convoy across while I was doing all the messaging. And I remember that one message. There was one message that made all the difference in the Freedom Convoy and blew it up all over social media that I've never told anybody about. And maybe one day I will. But that's the little special kernel I keep to myself that I remember that was the moment where it took on a life of its own. And it was quite amazing. Okay, and thank you everybody for joining on the Twitter space. Let me just a couple of comments here. So Paula, oh my God, I'm such an ass. My head turned my volume off of my phone. Oh, Paula couldn't hear us because her volume was down. Paula, listen, I'm a computer techie. I've had a computer since I was 3. I'm an idiot too. we all do that, so don't worry. When there is an election, when there is an election, who do we vote for? Well, I'm not going to tell anybody who to vote for. The Conservatives, in order to get power, they need to see a strong NDP. I'm not saying people should vote for the NDP as well, but I think if you are more in line with more traditional NDP values, working class, the elderly, that sort of thing, that party needs you because they need to go back to what they used to be and focusing on unions and the elderly and stuff like that. If we get that party to reset itself and the Conservative Party to continue being conservative, then even the Liberal Party will have to at some point abandon the extremism and just go back to being liberals, and we'll all have just, semi-reasonable alternatives and who to vote for, right? And some of you know, full disclosure, not really disclose. I've had a couple of former Liberal, cabinet members and members of the Liberal Party from, we're talking Paul Martin, Chrétien era Liberals, finally reach out to me because they saw the Freedom Convoy reached many people. It was not politically partisan. And these are people who are against the vaccine mandates, believe it or not, as well as the 30-some-odd Liberal MPs who were communicating through a conduit during the Freedom Convoy. And I think that's what scared Trudeau, and that's why he invoked the EMA, because he saw his own party was turning against him, and which means the EMA was completely political, and they know it, and that's why they're running from that. So anyways, this is why I'm trying to reach as many people as possible. We all have friends. I definitely lean a lot more conservative in most of my values, conservative/libertarian. But we all have members of our family and our friendly networks that have opposing political views. We need to keep those friendships and those relationships. We need not to politicize them so much, and we need to be able to understand each other and hear each other out. And that's why I know one friend in particular, I don't want to mention her name because I don't want to get embarrassed, took this book to her friends who were all against the Freedom Convoy, and they were all support of mandates and cerveza sickness medicine. I'm on YouTube. And this book apparently changed their minds, and now they've done a 180 degrees and are on board with us. So we just need to do more of that, and that's, strength in numbers, right? And strength in numbers. And how do you get numbers? You get numbers through love, understanding, or as I put it during the Freedom Convoy, peace, love, unity, and freedom. Okay, so on that, I'm going to, we've gone quite long here. I'm going to thank you for helping with this experiment on Twitter Spaces. Let me know in a DM if you thought it was a good idea. And if it is, then maybe I'll try doing it again. I do love the fact that honkingforfreedom.locals.com, if you subscribe there and you post and you want to comment, you can post memes and stuff, unlike all the other stuff. So you can communicate there as well on locals and on YouTube. Obviously, it's youtube.com/BJD, but it is what it is. And so there you go. I hope that was good. I hope you all have an awesome day. And remember, people in our families and our friends' networks who we love might be very confused about their political worldviews. They might still support Prime Minister Blackface. You're not going to press a button and change their mind. But maybe over time, if you take the gentle approach and you're strategic, and they see more and more people are realizing we cannot keep doubling down on this extremism, then maybe we'll be able to bring more and more people together, and we'll all be able to be free and prevent anything from this from happening ever again. Because that's my concern. My concern is the government hasn't learned their lesson, and the more Big Con Canada Inc. promulgates this narrative that, oh, there was a deal, or it was a fringe element, or all these rewrites that are completely false and inaccurate, if we let them get away with it, then what are we doing? We're allowing the government, and not just the Canadian governments around the world, and Doug Ford's provincial government, who also invoked the EMA, we're allowing them to set the stage for doing this again in the next couple of years, because we all know, of people who know science and medicine, there's a pandemic every couple of years, every few years. There's been N3, whatever it's called, swine flu. Every few years, there's a pandemic. This one was just exploited for political gains, and we can't allow them to have this tool in their toolbox moving forward, which is why we all need to ensure that only the truth is what stands over the long term. All right, I'm going to run. I love you all. You're the best, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.